There are 4 small habits that, if practiced with discipline, can make your mind sharper than most people you'll ever meet. They don't require wealth, privilege, or luck. They demand something far rarer, mastery of the self. We live in a time where people confuse intelligence with information. They believe knowing many things equals understanding life, but true intelligence, the kind that can see clearly through chaos, remain calm under pressure, and act with precision, is born not from what we collect, but from what we control. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." These 4 habits are built upon that foundation, the Stoic truth that the mind must be trained, not merely filled. 1. The habit of observation, training the eye before the tongue. The first habit is learning to observe without reacting. Most people live as slaves to their impulses. The moment they see, they judge. The moment they hear, they respond. But the wise observe before they decide, and in doing so, they develop what can only be called mental sharpness, a clarity that separates them from the rest. To truly see without the fog of emotion, this is an act of intelligence. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." When we stop reacting instantly, we free ourselves from the illusions created by emotion. Observation trains the brain to pause, to filter, and to analyze before it obeys an impulse. Imagine a man in a storm. Most people scream, curse the rain, and run. The wise man watches. He studies the direction of the wind, the sound of thunder, the rhythm of the storm. His calmness gives him power, and power gives him options. This is how the intelligent move through life, by understanding before acting, by seeing before speaking. When you make observation a daily discipline, the mind becomes a mirror. It reflects reality without distortion. You begin to understand people's intentions, their emotional triggers, and their hidden motives. You stop being manipulated by appearances because you've trained your perception to pierce through them. The Stoics understood that intelligence is not the accumulation of knowledge, but the ability to perceive truth without emotional interference. Observation is the foundation of that power, and once mastered, it becomes an invisible weapon, silent, calm, and devastatingly effective. 2. The habit of reflection, turning every day into a lesson. The second habit that makes the mind smarter is reflection, the act of reviewing one's own day, thoughts, and actions with brutal honesty. It is a mental sharpening stone, one that cuts away arrogance and self-delusion. Every night before sleep, the philosopher Seneca asked himself, "What bad habit have you cured today? What fault have you resisted? In what way are you better?" This daily ritual transformed ordinary experience into wisdom. Reflection forces the mind to confront its own errors, and in doing so, it strengthens judgment, self-control, and foresight. Reflection also rewires the brain. Modern neuroscience confirms what the Stoics already lived. Consistent self-examination strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for rational thought and emotional regulation. In simpler words, reflecting daily makes your brain physically smarter, more disciplined, more aware. The problem is that most people avoid reflection because it requires courage. It means facing one's own hypocrisy, laziness, envy, and fear. But that confrontation is where intelligence grows. Just as the body becomes stronger through resistance, the mind becomes sharper through self-confrontation. When we reflect, we transform pain into wisdom. Every mistake becomes a lesson, every failure a teacher. The man who reflects cannot be easily deceived by the same illusion twice. He evolves silently, daily, while the rest of the world keeps making the same emotional decisions over and over again. 3. The habit of solitude, strengthening the mind in silence. There is a kind of intelligence that cannot be learned from books, teachers, or conversations. It is born in silence, in the rare moments when a person stands alone, stripped of distraction, forced to meet the raw noise of their own mind. The third habit that can make your brain smarter is solitude, not the loneliness that breaks people, but the solitude that builds them. Most people fear being alone because solitude exposes them. It shows them the emptiness beneath their distractions, the fears beneath their laughter, and the chaos beneath their thoughts. But for the few who dare to face it, solitude becomes a weapon. It sharpens the intellect, deepens perception, and strengthens self-control. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, ruled an empire, yet wrote in his private journals, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." He understood that the world outside can only be mastered by mastering the world within. And that mastery begins in silence, when the mind no longer seeks escape, but understanding. When you withdraw from noise, your brain begins to reorganize itself. You start to see patterns in chaos, motives behind actions, truths behind appearances. The noise of the world, gossip, drama, validation, clouds your ability to think clearly. But in solitude, that fog begins to lift. The mind, once bombarded by constant stimulation, finally begins to breathe. Modern psychology echoes this ancient truth. Studies show that solitude enhances creative thinking, problem-solving, and emotional regulation. It allows the brain to process experiences and turn them into wisdom. But this only happens when solitude is intentional, when it's used not to escape the world, but to understand it. There's a dangerous misconception today that being social, loud, and constantly visible is a sign of confidence. But true confidence does not need to announce itself. It grows in silence. The Stoics believed that the wise man walks among people, but does not depend on them. He is self-contained, not because he despises others, but because his peace no longer depends on their approval. Solitude trains the brain to be independent. It teaches you to generate your own validation, your own calm, your own clarity. When you learn to sit alone without anxiety, you are no longer controlled by society's noise. You no longer need constant conversation to feel alive. You are alive because your mind is awake, alert, and aware of itself. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not by things, but by the opinions we hold about them. Solitude gives you the space to question those opinions. Why do you crave attention? Why do you fear rejection? Why do you feel anger, envy, or pride? In silence, you can trace every emotion to its root, and once you see the root, it loses its power over you. And here lies the paradox. The man who spends time alone becomes the one who understands others best. Solitude gives him empathy without weakness, detachment without coldness, and insight without arrogance. He becomes calm in chaos, grounded in storms, wise among fools. This is the intelligence that solitude creates, a mind that is unmoved by noise, unshaken by opinion, and unbroken by loneliness. A mind that sees clearly because it has faced its own darkness. Seneca once said, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." But what he meant wasn't just external association. It was learning to befriend your own mind, to become your own teacher, your own philosopher, your own companion. When you can stand alone with yourself and not tremble, you have achieved something most people never will. So take time to retreat from the crowd. Sit in silence. Let the world pass for a moment. In that stillness, you will find your greatest teacher, your own mind. And once you master that, you will realize that the smartest people are not the loudest. They are the quiet ones, who think, who reflect, and who never stop evolving. 4. The habit of self-reflection, the art of training the inner observer. There is one habit that separates the wise from the impulsive, the calm from the chaotic, the self-mastered from the enslaved, the habit of self-reflection. It is not glamorous, it does not make noise. Yet it is the quiet forge where a person's mind sharpens itself against the blade of truth. Most people live outward, chasing desires, escaping pain, reacting to everything that moves, but very few ever turn inward. They move through life like travelers who never stop to check the map of their own soul. The Stoics, however, believed that reflection was the highest form of intelligence. For how can a man govern the world if he cannot first govern his own mind? Marcus Aurelius in his Meditations wrote nightly to himself, examining his actions, motives, and weaknesses. He questioned his anger, his vanity, his desires, not to punish himself, but to understand. He saw reflection as purification, a way to wash away the dust that the world throws at us each day. He knew that the unexamined mind becomes its own enemy, whispering lies, exaggerating fears, and feeding on emotion. Self-reflection, then, is not passive. It is an active practice of inner investigation. It means asking, why did I react this way? What emotion controlled me? What part of me still needs discipline? In a world obsessed with appearances, self-reflection is rebellion. It forces you to confront not what you show others, but what you hide from yourself. It is standing before the mirror of your conscience, naked, honest, unguarded, and daring to look. Seneca wrote, "Every night before going to sleep, I review my entire day and measure my deeds." He believed that only through constant examination can one live with integrity and clarity. When you practice reflection, you train your brain to recognize patterns, the subtle triggers that make you angry, the hidden insecurities that make you act foolishly, the silent habits that drain your strength. This awareness is power. It turns unconscious reaction into deliberate response. It transforms blind emotion into calm understanding. Modern neuroscience now confirms what the Stoics already knew. That reflection strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for reasoning and self-control. It rewires your mind to pause before reacting, to think before speaking, and to choose clarity over chaos. To reflect is to slow down the endless storm of thought. It's to become the observer of your own mind, not its prisoner. When you start observing yourself, something extraordinary happens. The emotions that once ruled you begin to lose their authority. Anger becomes transparent, fear becomes smaller, pride becomes foolish. You begin to see yourself not as flawless, but as someone in the process of mastery. This process is not comfortable. Reflection can feel like burning, because the truth burns away illusion. But what survives that fire is pure strength. You start to understand what Epictetus meant when he said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Self-reflection is the key to that mastery. It gives you the distance to see your impulses before they control you. And once you develop this habit, your brain changes. You think slower but clearer. You react less but wiser. You no longer let people, circumstances, or emotions pull the strings of your behavior. You become your own anchor, steady, aware, unshaken. So before you sleep tonight, do what the Stoics did. Close your eyes and replay the day. Ask yourself, what did I do well? Where did I fail? What emotion ruled me today? What lesson can I take into tomorrow? Do this daily, and you will notice something profound. Your mind begins to grow in depth. Your thoughts become cleaner, your choices sharper, your peace unbreakable. Because a man who constantly reflects is not merely living, he is evolving. And that perhaps is the ultimate form of intelligence, to be endlessly aware of oneself and endlessly committed to becoming better. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And to master oneself, we must learn to observe before reacting and reflect before repeating. These 4 habits are the essence of true intelligence. The intelligence that endures when emotion fades, when chaos strikes, and when the world demands clarity. So train your mind in silence. Watch before you speak. Reflect before you sleep. And one day you will wake not only smarter, but unshakably wise. Get exclusive content and deeper insights. Join our membership today. Link in the description. If this resonated with you, subscribe to the Stoic Verse for more wisdom to guide your journey.